Okay, good day, everyone, and welcome to our grade 12 masterclass revision lesson. Guys, today we are covering the big one, maths paper one. Alrighty. So, guys, I just want to say a big thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come attend our lessons. We greatly appreciate it. All right. And I just want to say, how's the exams going? Okay, you guys can answer that. Are they going all right? Are you guys confident you're going to pass with all distinctions? All right. Are the exams, you know, is everything going all right, guys? Hopefully it is. And hopefully the studying for the maths is going well. Okay, hopefully the people in this chat are not the people who decided to study the day before or 2 days before the final exam. All right. So hopefully the exams are going well. Now, guys, I just want to say welcome. All right. This is part of our grade 12 masterclasses, which is presented by the Cape Town Science Center and fueled by Astron Energy. All right. If you don't know what Astron Energy is, it's the place where you go buy your petrol at. All right. Now, guys, before we start, for those of you who have attended our spring schools as well as our masterclasses, you know the drill by now. But for some of us who are here for the first time, let me just adjust my camera. For some of us who are here for the first time, there are some rules, all right? The first one is that we can obviously see our cameras and mics have all been disabled, all right? That is just because we don't want any distractions in our lessons. Remember, guys, I'm presenting, there are people watching. We do not want to see or hear stuff happening in the background because it can be quite distracting for the presenter as well as for everyone watching, all right? Rule number two, guys, is that if you have any questions, you may feel more than free to post any questions you have in the chat. All right. We have kept the chat active. So if you have any questions, you may answer it. All right. Or you can ask it in the chat and I'll do my best to answer it. Okay, guys. Now I've seen some questions asking about recordings and the lesson time. Guys, this lesson is going to start now from 1 and we're going to try and end it at 4 o'clock on the dot. We're going to keep it within 3 hours. Because number one, your maths test is 3 hours, all right? And number two, okay, we don't want to keep it too long because if you study for too long, that's when information starts falling out of your brain, all right? So we're going to keep it to 3 hours maximum, all right? Now, I know in the previous lessons, I gave you guys time to answer questions. I will not be able to do it this lesson, all right? I really want to keep this lesson within 3 hours. I do not want this lesson to drag on to 4 hours, even 5 hours. So hopefully you guys did try and attempt this question paper I sent you guys. All right, so if I want you guys to answer, you may just quickly post your answer in the chat and it will take about a minute. All right. Now, guys, please remember one more thing. This is a learning environment. Okay. Do not be shy to ask questions and do not be afraid to post your answer. And don't be afraid to post the wrong answer. That's what I want to say. Okay. Studying is about learning. It's about making mistakes. Oh, there's always stuff to learn, even out of making a mistake. And yeah, it's about asking questions. Because if you don't know, there's no shame in not knowing, right? Rather ask and know than don't ask. And then that same thing you don't know pops up in your exam question. All right. So, guys, without any further ado, one more thing. One last thing, can everyone in this chat please state their name, their school, and the number of people watching this lesson at your device? So if it's just you, you put your name, your school, and the number one. If it's you presenting this to a classroom, let's say you are a teacher, you put your name, your class, or your name, your school, and the number of people in that class, including you. All right. This is just for our record keeping purposes. And guys, remember, this will be recorded and we will make the video link available by the end, a few minutes after that lesson has ended. All right. So about 5 o'clock, the latest, you will be getting the recording. So please, guys, do not stress. All right. So without any further ado, let's get started. So guys, we are starting with paper one. Obviously, that is being written on Friday, and hopefully we are all ready for that exam. Okay. So let's get started. By the way, guys, this is a WCD prelim that you guys just read earlier this year. So this is quite a recent paper. So guys, here are obviously your instructions. Most of it is explaining things that we should know. But the most important part I always want to point out is number 5. which states answers only will not necessarily be awarded full marks. So guys, for some questions, you can't just put the answer. You have to show you're working out, all right? A rule of thumb is if it's usually a 2-mark question, then just writing the answer will get you the marks. But in some questions, you have to do full calculations, all right? If you just write the answer, you will only get half the marks, or you'll only get 1 mark out of 6, for instance. So please write your to show your calculations. All right. Then the final one was number 7. Round your answer off to 2 decimal places. Guys, if your answer is correct, but you round it off to 3 decimal places, they can take away marks for rounding off. So please make sure your answer is always rounded off to 2 decimal places. And if the question says, show your answer in 2 decimal places, which a few of them do, you show your answer in 2 decimal places. Okay, guys. And then finally, number 10, write neatly and legibly. Guys, remember, if your examiner, these final exam markers, they're going to mark hundreds of papers. They are going to get the Afrikaans word is full. Okay. If your handwriting is untidy and they are marking and they can't make out what you're saying, they're just going to go, mark it wrong and move on with their lives. Okay. So please write neatly. Untidy handwriting can cost you marks sometimes. So please, guys, remember that. Okay. Let's get started. Question 1, guys. Question 1 in every exam, whether you are writing your final exam or your June exam or your prelim, is always going to be your algebra. Okay, so let's get started. Okay. Oops, get out the wrong pen. Get out my pen. There we go. So question 1.1.1 or 1.1 asks solve for x, and then 1.1.1 gives us this. And it has a bracket multiplied by a bracket is equal to 0. So what does that mean? That means that the first bracket can be equal to 0 or the second bracket can be equal to 0. Guys, please, hopefully you made use of that video I sent you the other day. Please, if you ever get a situation where you have a bracket times a bracket is equal to a number, it doesn't mean that the one bracket is equal to that number and the other bracket is equal. It only works if it's equal to 0. Okay, so this one is quite easy to mark. So that therefore means that the first bracket, x minus 1, is equal to 0. So therefore, x is equal to positive 1. There's my first answer. Or it can mean that the second bracket, 2x minus 6, is equal to 0. So therefore, 2x is equal to 6. And therefore, x is equal to 3. So those are your 2 options. All right, guys? 2 easy marks on a platter. 1.1.2 asks, it gives you this statement over here, x squared minus 7x minus 7 is equal to 0. And it says answers correct to 2 decimal places. Guys, when they give you that little phrase, it means you should use your quadratic formula. Okay, that's what it means. So let's look at this. Our quadratic formula states that x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now we need to know what a is, what b is, what c is. A is the number that's in front of our x squared. Now, guys, don't put naught. It's 1. So a is equal to 1. B is equal to, now this is where some kids make mistakes. B is not 7. B is negative 7. Remember, that's the number that's next to your x. So that is negative 7, not just 7. And finally, C, the same applies. It's not 7, it is negative 7. Always remember, guys, don't forget that negative sign. Otherwise, your answer will be wrong or you might get math error. All right. So this will be equal to negative, and I put in brackets negative 7 because that's my value for B, plus or minus the square root of negative 7 squared minus 4 times 1, which is A, times C, which is negative 7. All right. Divided by 2 times 1. And guys, you just type this on your calculator. This is easy calculator work. You get that x can be 7.89 or x is equal to 0.89. So guys, already 2 minutes into my exam, I have 5 marks on the plate. Easy, all right? Moving on. 1.1.3 is an identity. All right, and it says 6x squared plus 7x is greater than 5. So we want to know for which values of x is this true. Now, the first thing I do is I say that 6x squared plus 7x minus 5 is greater than 0. Remember, I take the 5 across. I like it when my equations are equal to 0 because then I can factorize and find x a lot easily. Okay, sorry about that. Now, do we all know how to factorize something like this? All right, guys, you guys can say yes or no in the chat. Do we all understand how to factorize a polynomial that looks like this? All right. Can we all do that? Okay, most of us can do it. Yes, so sorry, the next question, that was a negative 0.89. Good eye. But yes, okay. So guys, for this one, for those of you who don't understand, I always do this. I look at my x's, and then I look at my c value, all right? So this is my x, and I'm going to focus, and I find the factors of that. So that will be 3 and 2. And then I look at the factors of c, which is this, and that is going to be, I'm going to put it like this, 1 and 5. Now what you do, guys, is you multiply these two across. So it goes 3 times 1 is 3, 2 times 5 is 10. Now the answers, these two answers, you must sum them in such a way that we get a positive 7. Now let's ask ourselves, how do I add 10 and 3 to get positive 7? It's simple. 10 minus 3 gives me positive 7. So it means that this 3 needs to be a negative. So I'm going to make this one a negative. So 3 multiplied by negative 1 is negative 3. 2 multiplied by positive 5 is 10. 10 minus 3 is 7. So that's done. Your final step, you just crisscross. All right. So therefore, I'll say that 3x plus 5 multiplied by 2x minus 1 is greater than 0. Now remember, when you can use the quadratic formula, but that's, let's test ourselves and actually practice using that, right? Quadratic formula is for wussies, all right? We factorize properly, all right? So what we do is then we draw our number line, all right? Remember, equalities always requires a number line, and we put in our critical points. The first one is the value for this, all right? So this will be, if you do the math, it's a negative 5 over 3. Our other critical point is 1 over 2. It's a half. And we want to know the values, because remember, this actually makes a parabola. I always like to draw a parabola, right? And your critical points are basically your x-intercepts for my parabola. And I want to know for which values of x will this function or this parabola be above my horizontal line, all right? So if I look here, I can see that if I go from negative 5 over 3 downwards, my parabola is above the horizontal line. If I go from 1/2 upwards, again, it's above the line. So what does that mean? That means that therefore, you'll see why I put number 1 first. That means that x either needs to be less than negative 5 over 3, or x needs to be greater than a half. All right. So that's your answer. You could have written it like that. I know some schools write it like this. So you will say that this is negative infinity, negative 5 over 3. Remember, you use your curly brackets to show that you are not including negative 5 over 3. And then always there's upside this u sign. And you go 1 over 2 and positive infinity curly brackets. So guys, those are your two options. If you are not taught the second option, don't worry about it. Don't write the second option, but some schools are taught that way. All right. So, yes. So that is the answer. Do we all understand so far? Can you guys all see my screen? Okay, if you can't see my screen, please remember you can just exit the chat and re-enter the chat again, and then you could see it. All righty. Okay, so screen sharing. Okay, so can't we use critical values and say that x equals a at a certain value? So Jason, I'm not too sure what you mean by that. All right. So do you mind elaborating on that a bit? Remember also, guys, x cannot be equal to negative 5 over 3 and 1 over 2. All right. It cannot be equal to that because the question specifically said greater than. All right. If you put equal to, they take away a mark. All right. So please. Oops. Okay. So let's just. Oops. Where is my mouse? There we go. All right. Next question. All right. So let me just see what everyone else is saying. Sorry, guys. Just want to make sure. Yeah. So x is less than negative 5 over 3. All right. So that's what I said in the previous slide. Let me just show you. I just maybe wrote it the other way around. Yeah. So x is less than negative 5 over 3. Okay. I just wrote it the other way around. Okay. Okay, so next question. So 1.1.4 asks 1 is equal to negative 6 over the square root of x plus 2 plus the square root of x plus 2. And we want to know for which values of x is this true. All right. So guys, did you answer this question? If you did, I want you to post your answers in the chat. All right, so I'll give you a minute just to post your answers in the chat, and then we can continue with these questions. So if you answer this question, please post your answers in the chat. All righty. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of x equal to 7. Very, very good. I see someone put here x is not equal to 2 in the chat. I don't know how you managed to do that with that not equals to sign, but can you please just show all of us? Because, wow, I don't know how to put that not equal to sign like on Word or on Teams, right? So very good for figuring that out. So I see a few answers. X is equal to 7. Okay. So for those of you who didn't, let me still go through it. All right. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to say 1 is equal to, and I'm just going to put both of them into fraction form, all right? I'm sure by now, guys, we all know how to deal with fractions, all right? How to add fractions and that. So I'm not going to waste time doing that, all right? So I'm just going to say that this is negative 6 plus the square root of x plus 2 times the square root of x plus 2, and I put them all over the same common denominator, which is square root of x plus 2. All right, now I'm going to simplify. This is just 1 is equal to negative 6. Now square root of x times 2, if you times it again, that just becomes x plus 2. So this is plus x plus 2 over the square root of x plus 2. All right, so what I do, I simplify. I take this to the other side, and this just becomes the square root of x plus 2 is equal to x minus 4. Remember, negative 6 plus positive 2 is negative 4. Now, when you deal with this, I do not want to work with that square root sign, all right? So what do? I square both sides. This becomes the squared, all right? So this becomes x plus 2 is equal to x minus 4 squared. So that becomes x squared minus 8x plus 16. And now I want this equal to 0. So I'm going to take this x plus 2, take it that side. So 0 is equal to x squared minus 9x, all right, plus 14. I then factorize. I get that therefore 0 is equal now to factors of 14. And if I add them together, give me 9. So that's x minus 7, x minus 2. And that makes sense. Negative 7 minus 2 is negative 9. Negative 7 times negative 2, that's positive 14. So I know I'm on the right track. So therefore, x is equal to 7 or 2. Now, am I done? No. A rule of thumb is when you deal with a question that has square roots, you have to test your answers, guys. So always test the answers when you are dealing with questions that have square roots, because not all the answers will actually work out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute all of this back into my original equation. So when I substitute x is equal to 7, my answer is positive 1, which is correct because that's what this whole thing is equal to. However, when I substitute x is equal to 2, the answer becomes negative 1. Now that's not right because my answer was positive 1 in the original equation. So I know that x cannot be equal to 2. So therefore, x is equal to 7 and x is not equal to 2. And there are your answers. All right. So someone said, what if we let the square root equal k? If you got the answer, I don't really like that method, all right? Because sometimes it like you think that you can use it for one question. It actually turns out you can't always use it, and then you can get it wrong. So if you use that, good for you, but I would suggest that you stick to this method, all right? However, if you used it and got the same answer correct, the beauty of math is, guys, you can do multiple things and you can still get to the same answer. So as long as what you are doing is mathematically correct, that's good, all right? Okay, so guys, let's continue. Moving on. Now it says solve simultaneously for x and y, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this part first, all right? Remember, when you're dealing with simultaneous equations, try and get y on its own or x on its own first before you move on. So I'm going to deal with this one first. So this is 6y plus 2x is equal to 4. And I want to just get that x on its own. So I can substitute that into my other equation, all right? So it becomes 2x is equal to 4 minus 6y. So therefore, if you divide everything by 2, you get that this is 2 minus 3y. Bam. So that's the first equation, and I can substitute that into the second equation, all right? So the second equation is x squared plus x times y is equal to 4. So I'm going to substitute into x. So therefore, this becomes x squared, which is 2 minus 3y squared plus x times y, which is simply 2 minus 3y times y is equal to 4. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand out everything and I'm going to simplify from there. So 2 minus 3y squared, so that is 4. All right, so 2 times negative 3 is negative 6 minus 12y plus 9y squared. Don't forget to square both terms, the 3 as well as the y. All right, that becomes plus 2y minus 3y squared minus 4 is equal to 0. All right, so now, guys, you just simplify. This is 12y. 12y, 2y. Okay, there's negative 12y plus 2y, that is negative 10y. 9 minus 3, that is 6y squared. 6y squared, the 4's cancel, is equal to 0. All right, so I'm going to write it over here. So 6y squared minus 10y is equal to 0. So what I can do is I can factor out a 2y, and I get that this is 3y minus 5 is equal to 0. So therefore, y is either 0, because this part can be 0, or y is equal to negative 5 over 3. So what you do now, your final step, you take both answers for y and you substitute it back into this equation, and therefore you get that x is equal to 2 or negative 3. And those are your final answers. All right, guys? So, do we all understand so far? Are we still awake? Are we still ready? Are we still engaged? Okay, guys, you can send a thumbs up or thumbs down if you don't understand. You have any questions you would like to ask? You can ask in the chat. Feel more than free to ask in the chat. I'm going to take a sip of water. Someone asked, so will we be penalized if we use the quadratic formula? No. You can use it. Oh, sorry, there's a piece of ice. You can use the quadratic formula. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, but I just think it sometimes, yeah, sorry, that's a positive. Okay, yeah, that was positive, but if you substitute it, you get negative 3. But if you use a quadratic formula, there's no problem with that, all right? But sometimes it's best just to, like, test yourself, try and push yourselves to factorize without depending on the quadratic formula. But yeah, you can use the quadratic formula, no worries. Okay, yes, y was positive 5 over 3, but if you substituted in, you would have gotten negative 3. Sorry about that. Silly mistake. Anyways, that's also another thing, guys. Please make sure you write your answers properly, all right? Because if you don't, if you just put a minus instead of a plus or plus instead of a minus, you can lose silly marks, okay? So don't be like me, okay? Anyways, moving on. Now it says simplify, all right? So 1.3 asks to simplify. So guys, what is your answer for 1.3? I want to see. No, I shouldn't be 7 over 8, 6. Okay, 8, perfect. Right, so most of us got this answer correct. Remember, guys, you cannot use your calculator. Okay, so you can't just substitute into any value into x and get the answer. You actually have to do like proper calculations. So let's figure this out. So square root of 3 times 48. Well, let's simplify this. Okay, so square root of 3 is now multiplied. Now, the factors of 48 is 16 and 3. You can check this on your calculator, by the way. Minus 4x plus 1 over 2 times 2x. All right? If I simplify this, this is basically 16 minus, this becomes square root 3 times, this is just 4 square root 3 minus, what I'm going to do now is, I'm going to simplify this top term. This is 2 squared, because 4 is 2 squared, to the power of x plus 1, divided by 2 to the power of 2x. All right? Multiplying this, remember square root 3 times square root 3, that's positive 3, so that becomes 4 times 3, which is 12. All right? So this part over here, guys, minus, this becomes, if I simplify the top part, remember, if you have an exponent and outside the brackets it's raised to a power, you multiply this exponent. All right, so this becomes 2 to the power of, if I multiply this 2 into my x plus 1, I get 2x plus 2 divided by 2 to the power of 2x. All right, now remember, if I have a to the power of x plus y, that's the same as saying a to the power of x times a to the power of y. Okay, it's your exponent laws. So this becomes 12 minus 2 to the power of 2x times 2 squared divided by 2 to the power of 2x. Now look, these can cancel. And therefore, I have 12 minus 2 squared, which is 4. And my answer is 8. All right? 3 simple marks. Someone asked, so the first person asked, sir, since they say we should simplify without using a calculator, how would we check if you can actually check if your answer is correct by using a calculator. I mean, they're not going to know. They're not watching you like a hawk. So if you get your final answer, go test your final answer. All right. Make sure that they match using, you can use a calculator just to go test your answer, but just when doing the calculations, they want to see you're working out. All right. They don't want to see let x equal 5 and then you just substitute and then you get an answer out. They want to see how you simplify everything, but you can feel more than free to check your answer by using your calculator when you are finished. All right. And obviously, if the answers don't match, it means you've made a mistake somewhere. So would I lose marks if I skip the first step? No, but you must just be very careful sometimes because certain questions, they award you marks for certain steps. All right. So sometimes they would not deduct marks, but I don't think they would definitely not have deducted marks from this. You would have gotten marks, if I check now from the memo, you would have gotten marks for this, expanding my 4 into 2 squared. You would have gotten marks for this, simplifying this part, and you also would have gotten marks for the final answer, right? So that's where your 3 marks would have come. Expanding my 4, simplifying this 3 times square root of 48, and finally your final answer, all right? So that's where you would have gotten your marks. Not especially for a 3-mark question. If you skipped 1 or 2 steps, they would not have really penalized you. But sometimes for the big question, there are certain parts in that calculation where they need to see that step to give you the mark. So just, be careful what question. If it's a 3-mark question, they wouldn't mind. But big questions, show all you're working out. Okay? So next question. question 1.4. I always like the 1.4 or the final question in the algebra because usually that's a quite tricky one. All right. So it says given f of x is 3 and then in brackets it's x minus 1 squared plus 5, and then g of x is equal to 3. Is it possible for the graphs f and g to intersect? Give reasons for your answer. So guys, what was your answer for 1.4.1? Okay, you guys can post it in the chat. I see there's some other questions. Don't worry, I'll get back to those other ones. But for the rest of you guys, can you please post your answer in 1.4 for 1.4.1 and give a reason? I'm just seeing it. I'm just saying no, it does not. I want a reason. This person wrote in very, very big letters. Okay, we get you. We get it. They don't intersect. Okay. But can someone please give a reason? All right. Remember, you get marks for yes or no, and you'll get marks for a reason. It's 2 marks. Okay. So I want a reason. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, no, okay. So let's look at this. We all know that f of x is, well, no, we know that g of x is a horizontal line. It looks something like this. So this is g of x. Now for the graphs to intersect, and this is, by the way, is equal to 3. So this line is y is equal to 3. Now f of x is a parabola. All right. Now, when will it's also a parabola that does this, right? That does that. Okay. When will the parabola intersect? It will intersect when it's either like this, all right, or it will intersect when it's like this. This is where we will find points of intersection. So looking at this, what can I see? I can see that there will only be a point of intersection when the y value, so this will be x and some y, when the y value of my turning point for the parabola is less than g of x or equal to g of x. If that y value is greater than g of x, all right, so if the y value is greater than 3, there will be no intersection. So let's say this is my parabola, all right, and this is a turning point x and 5, all right? Here is y is equal to 3. You can see that the y value of my parabola is is greater than the y value or it's greater than 3. So therefore, there'll be no intersection. If my parabola looks something like this, okay, some x value and -1, then we will see an intersection y because the y value for my turning point of graph f is less than g of x. So therefore, it's less than 3. All right, we all understand that. Okay. So we need to first focus on what is the turning point for f. So the turning point for f of x is simply equal to, or the coordinates is 1 and +5. So therefore, no intersection as the turning point. So the turning point TP is greater than g of x. All right. Okay, so guys, hopefully that makes sense. All right. So someone says you do not get it. Remember, this is my function. All right. This is f of x, and this is g of x. All right. This is my graph g. And this graph is basically y is equal to 3. For there to be for there to be an intersection, the turning point of this graph either needs to be touching this horizontal line, or it needs to be below the horizontal line, meaning that the y value, right? Because remember, this is y, this will be x. The y value for my graph f at the turning point needs to be less or equal to 3 for there to be an intersection. If the y value of my turning point for graph f is greater than 3, so if it's like this, right? So this is what, 1 and 5. It means that it will look something like this. This is y is equal to 3. So the y value of my turning point is greater than 3, which means that there is no point of intersection. All right? Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so you can actually equate the two functions together, and if you try to calculate it, you would get no solution, meaning that there is no point of intersection, right? So you could have done that method as well, all right? So you could have actually equated them. If your value, if let's say this was a -5, so this was 3 times x minus 1 squared minus 5, then it means that there would have been a point of intersection, all right? Okay, moving on. So this one asks, determine the value or values of k for which f of x equals, which is equal to g of x minus k has two unequal roots. Now, guys, this little part should be sending off alarm bells in your head. When you see unequal root or two unequal roots, your discriminant should be ringing in your head. All right, remember, your discriminant is greater than 0 for real unequal roots. All right, so when your discriminant is greater than 0, that means that there will be real roots and both the roots will be different. All right, if it's equal to 0, that means equal roots. Okay, equal roots. And then if it's less than 0, it means no roots. Okay, hopefully we remember that. Okay, so we need to know, firstly, okay, let's first figure this out, right? We need to know now the intersections. All right, so when the graphs intersect, right, it'll look something like this. What do we know about the equation of graphs when they intersect? The equations are the same. So therefore, 3 times x minus 1 squared plus 5 will be the same as 3 minus k. All right. And now, guys, you just multiply everything out. On the one side, this is just going to be, if you do the math, it's 3x squared minus 6x plus 8 is equal to 3 minus k. So therefore, 0 is equal to, what does this become? 3x squared minus 6x plus 8 minus 3 plus k. All right, so I simplify this. This becomes 3x squared minus 6x. This becomes plus 5 plus k. Alrighty, and I'm just going to put the 5 and k in brackets. All right, so what have I done now? I have just created the equation that can help me determine the intercepts for my functions, for f and g. So that's what this equation has represented. Remember, this 3 is my a value, this -6 is my b value, and this 5 plus k, that is my c value. All right, so a is 3, b is -6, and 5 is, oh, sorry, c is equal to 5 plus k. Now remember, we want to know for which values of k will there be unequal roots, real unequal roots. So what do I know? I know about the discriminant. So therefore, my discriminant needs to be greater than 0. Now, what is the discriminant? Remember, it's that b squared minus 4ac must be greater than 0. So now let's figure it out. We already know what b is. B is -6 squared minus 4a is 3, and then c is simply 5 plus k is greater than 0. And all I need to do now is I need to solve for k. So this becomes 36 minus 4 times 3, that's 12. So it's -12. 5 plus k is greater than 0. And all I need to now do is I need to solve for k. So -12 times 5 plus k is greater than -36. What do I do now? I divide both sides by -12. I get 5 plus k. Now remember, when you divide, that sign flips, that greater than sign flips. So now instead of going that way, it faces that way, is equal to +3. And therefore, k must be less than -2. And Bob's your uncle. So remember, what did I first do? I first had to find out, okay, what is the equation that I can use to find the intercepts of my function? That's what I did over here. Okay, that's what I did over here. Now, in order to find the root, or for which values of k will there be roots, I had to think of the discriminant. Remember, for unequal and real roots, the discriminant is greater than 0. All right? I substituted into my equation and I solved for k. Therefore, k needs to be less than -2 in order for there to be a point of intersection. All right? Or for two unequal points of intersection. That's what I mean. Okay? So, do we all understand? Remember, guys, some of your techniques and some of the ways in which you solve this equation or solve these problems might be different to mine, but don't worry. As long as what you have done is mathematically correct, you may do it. All right. If you look at memos for maths papers, there are sometimes 3 or 4 different options. In physics, it's 10 times worse. You literally get 10 different options. All right. That's the beauty of maths and physics. You can take different routes and still get to the same answer. All right. So, moving on. That was algebra done. Alrighty. Now we can get to question 2. All right. Someone said 5 is greater than, you could have done that, but yeah. All right. You could have done that if your steps was done properly. All right. Okay. 2.1 says, this is now question 2. Question 2 is always your sequences and your series. All right. So it says here on the first day, Brett played an online game for 12 minutes. All right. On the second day, he played for 12 minutes longer than the previous day. All right. He kept on increasing the time each day. The record of time he spent per day is given on the table below. So that's the table over here. All right. If the time spent playing the game forms a quadratic sequence, determine, and for 2.1.1, it says the values of A and B. So guys, what did you get for A and B? You can post in the chat quickly. Okay, perfect, 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 perfect. So for those of you who don't know, remember, we are going to focus on the time. So this was 12, 24, this is our pattern, 40, and then A and B. Remember, this day is just your term 1, term 2, term 3. So this is N, and that's basically Tn. All right. So now remember, a quadratic sequence, the second difference is common. That first difference changes, but the second difference is common. So what's the difference here? Well, 12 and 24 is simply 12. 12 and 30, well, that's 24. So therefore, what will the difference between this? Whoa, yeah, 12 and 24. No, 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 no. Oops, I made a mistake here. I'm now writing this incorrectly. There we go. Oops, give me a second. So 40 minus 24, that's 16. All right. So you can see that the common difference here is 4. So what would the next pattern be here for my first difference? All right. This is the second difference. I know that the second difference is going to be 4. The first difference is 12 plus 4 is 16. So therefore, the difference between A and 40, that's just going to be 20. All right. The difference between A and B, that's just going to be 24. And the common difference is still 4. So if the difference between A and 40 is 20, that therefore means that A is simply 60. All right, so A I know is 60. All right, and now I simply do 60 plus 24. So therefore, B is equal to 60 plus 24, which is 84. And Bob is your uncle. All right, do you guys understand? Very, very easy. All right, moving on. 2.1.2 asks, determine the time spent for the nth day. So we need to find the general formula. Alrighty, so remember, there's 3 things you need to know. Number 1, 2a is always equal to the second difference. The second difference. All right, so 2a, what's the second difference? The second difference is 4. Okay, it's this one over here. So 2a is equal to 4. So that means that therefore a is simply equal to 2. Done. So I have my first value, all right? Because remember, for a quadratic sequence, Tn is simply an squared plus bn plus c. And I need to find a, b, and c. I already have a. Now I can find b. B is equal to 3a plus b, and that's equal to the first value of my first difference, which is 12. All right? So 3a plus b is equal to that. So that means that 3a plus b is equal to 12. All right. Now what do? I substitute a over here because I already know what a is. So this becomes 3 times 2 plus b is equal to 12. And when you solve for b, you get that b is equal to 6. Bam. Finally, I know that a plus b plus c is term 1. All right, so what's term 1? Term 1 also happened to be 12. So a plus b plus c is equal to 12. Now I know what a is because I just figured it out. I also know what b is. Okay, so 2 plus 6 plus c is equal to 12. So that becomes 8 plus c is equal to 12. And therefore c is 12 minus 8, which is 4. Bam. So therefore, we have A, we have B, we have C. So therefore, Tn is equal to 2n squared plus 6n plus 4. And there is your answer. Bam. Okay, guys. Pretty simple. All right. Well done, guys, for getting the answer. Very, very good. All right. Moving on. On which day did he play for 312 minutes? So, guys, what was the answer for that one? On which day did he play for 312 minutes? Perfect. All right. Perfect. Perfect. But you see, you guys are so good at maths. All right. I know that you guys are all going to get 80%. So I know that Tn is equal to 2n squared plus 6n plus 4. All right. And I want to know for which values of n will my term or my Tn be 312. So I say that 312 is equal to 2n squared plus 6n plus 4. And now I simply solve for everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to divide everything by 2. So I get 156 is equal to n squared plus 3n plus 2. And I get that 0 is equal to n squared plus 3n minus 154. So again, you guys can use your quadratic formula, all right? Yes, I see someone says we're going to get 90%. Good. Simon said, I am not getting 80%. Yes, you are not. You're going to get 90%. All right. So guys, you factorize this. So the factors of 154, that is 11 and 14. And I need to sum them in such a way that I get 3. So that it becomes n plus 14 times n minus 11. And therefore, n is equal to negative 14 or n is equal to positive 11. Now, here's the thing, guys. N always has to be greater than 0, all right? Remember, your term numbers has to be greater than 0, all right? So therefore, n has to be greater than 0. So therefore, n is equal to 11, all right? So the amount of times or the day that he played for 312 minutes was day 11, all right? You see, that's a long time to be playing video games, okay? So all right, guys, was that simple enough? Very, very easy marks. All right, someone said, in what scenario will we substitute 312 as n? That's if they said, remember, n was the number of days. So if they asked, how long would he have played after 312 days, then you would have substituted that into n. All right? Yes, 11 days of video games is very, very long. Oh, it's weak. Wow. Okay, guys. Sometimes we will have to play outside. Okay. Right? Okay. Anyways, 2.2 asks, given that the sum to infinity is this term over here, all right, where p is not equal to 0, calculate the value of p if it is given that the sum to infinity is equal to 3. So, guys, what was your answer for this one? All right. So what did we get for this one? You guys can post your answers in the chat. Okay, okay. Okay, I'm seeing a vast amount of different answers. So let's go through the answer. So I'm just going to write it over here. The sum to infinity is equal to the sum starting at k is equal to 1, ending at infinity of 4p times 1 minus k. We know that p is not equal to 0. That's the domain. Now, what do I do first? Number one, guys, I always like to find at least 3 terms, all right? So what I do is I start at 1. So what will the first term be? So term 1, well, if I substitute 1 over here, that becomes 4 multiplied by p to the power of 1 minus 1. So that becomes 4p p to the power of 1 minus 1, that becomes 4 times p to the power of 0, which is just 4. Term 2 is equal to, well, that becomes 4 p to the power of 2, or sorry, 1 minus 2. So that becomes 4 times p to the power of negative 1. That becomes 4 over p. Term 3, that just becomes 4 to the power, or times p to the power of negative 2. All right, so that becomes 4 over p squared, and so on and so on. That's the first thing I do. I first find out, okay, what are the first three terms? I've done that. Number 2, I know, okay, I know the sum to infinity is 3. What is the equation for your sum to infinity? I know that the sum to infinity is a divided by 1 minus r. So what do I need to do? I need to find two things. I need to find a, and I need to find r, okay? Now here's the thing. People get it very confused sometimes. People always think that a is term 1. It is not term 1. It is your starting point. Where did I start? Okay. Now, in this case, we started at 1. So I started at term 1. But in other cases, guys, you might start at term 3. And in that case, let's say we started at term 3, then a would be this value over here. So please just let that sink in. A is where you start your series. It's not always term 1. All right. In this case, we started at 1. So a, it happens to be term 1, which is 4. All right. Or your common ratio is simply, well, if you look here, you can see that I keep multiplying everything by 1 over p. All right, 1 over p. So r is simply 1 over p. Okay, so now I know what a is, I know what r is. All right, and I've also been given my sum to infinity. All right, now I can figure out what p is. Okay, so I'm going to write over here. I know that 3 is equal to a, which was 4, divided by r, or 1 minus r, which was 1 over p. Okay, that's what I know. Okay, now I just need to solve for p. Okay, so what I do is I take this whole denominator that side, so that becomes 3, multiplied by 1 minus 1 over p is equal to 4. So 1 minus 1 over p is 4 over 3. And therefore, let me just rub some stuff out quickly. Okay. Just give me a second. Oops. So therefore, negative 1 over p is equal, well, to 4 over 3 minus 1. That's a third. All right. And then what you do is you get that negative 1 is equal to 1 over 3p. And therefore, p is equal to negative 3. And Bob's your uncle. So remember, guys, step 1. I find at least 3 terms, all right? And I start where they tell me to start, okay? I forgot to mention that. Let me just get my eraser, rub this all out. There we go. Remember? Pen, I'm going to change colors now or later. Remember, they said start at k is equal to 1. So therefore, I find term 1, all right? I find term 2, I find term 3. I then figure out that a is my starting point, and in this case, my starting point happened to be term 1, which is 4. It's not always that. Please, guys, be very careful. All right. R is my common ratio, and you can see that as this pattern goes along, I just keep multiplying the previous term by 1 over p. So R is simply 1 over p. Okay. And then I do my little equation over here. I substitute everything into this equation, and I find that p is negative 3. So for those of you who got negative 3, well done. Okay. No. Okay, so they represented this equation. So someone asked, sir, isn't r equal to p because the formula is Tn is e a to the power of Rn minus 1? No, not always, okay? If they gave you the pattern, then you could have represented it like this. But in this case, no, this was the pattern that they actually gave you, all right? So you should have used that pattern, okay? All right. Now someone asks, okay, I'm going to just rub it out over here. I'm going to show you how to get to R. So sometimes, when you practice math a lot, you can actually start to see the common ratio quite quickly. So let me just get out my pen. So R, there's another way you can find it out. R is always term 2 divided by term 1. Okay, so term 2, that is 4 times p to the power of 1 minus 2, which is negative 1. All right, divided by term 1, which is 4. Okay, that's the value for p. And now what you do is you just simplify. These 4's cancel, and I'm left with p to the power of negative 1, and therefore that's just 1 over p. There we go. Does that make sense? All righty. Let's just see, someone asked me another question. Do you lose marks for not having fractions as opposed to no? P to the power of negative 1 is exactly the same as 1 over p. You shouldn't be losing marks. If you're losing marks, I'll say something very nasty to your teacher, okay? But it's the same thing. You should not be losing marks. It's a very silly thing to lose marks for, and you will not be losing marks for that, so don't worry, okay? Okay, next question asks, is the series convergent? Explain your answer. So is it convergent, guys? Yes or no? And explain why. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Perfect. So remember, for a convergent series, what do we know? We need to know that R is in between negative 1 and positive 1. Now, what was R? Well, we first know that R is 1 over P. Okay, that's what I figured out over here. Okay. Now, what was P? P is negative 3. So that became 1 over negative 3, which is simply negative 1 over 3. Now, I can assure you, negative 1 over 3 is between negative 1 and positive 1. So therefore, the series converges because R is in between negative 1 and positive 1. All right. Another way we say it, you don't have to know it, but we say that R is less than the absolute value of 1. Okay. That's just another way of saying it, but you don't have to worry about this way. It's just, yeah, we know this way. R is in between negative 1 and positive 1. So therefore, this converges. All right. Now, when I first looked at this question, I thought, okay, but they gave us the sum to infinity, right? Doesn't that mean that it converges? No, because sometimes you can get the sum to infinity, all right? And R can be greater than negative 1. It just means that this thing is not really true, okay? It only converges when your common ratio is in between negative 1 and positive 1, okay? Moving on. Okay, I just want to read it because I can't really see the screen so well. So it says here, give me a second. Oops. Here's over here for 2.3, it says, an arithmetic series has a common difference of 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write that D is equal to 3, all right? It always helps to write down what they have been given or what you have been given, guys. It just helps it sink in. It's better than just highlighting the answer. I don't know why people highlight. Write down what you have been given. It just helps you. It helps it sink in and it helps you visualize what you need to work with when answering the question, all right? Yeah. Common difference of 3. The third and the sixth term of the series are respectively that and that. All right. So that is term 3 and that is term 6. All righty. And we need to show for 2 marks that x is equal to negative 4. So what do I know? What do I know? Well, number one, when you see this question, you need to first write down, okay, what do I know so far? I know, number one, that this is an arithmetic sequence. So what is the general formula? Tn is equal to a plus n minus 1 times the difference. That's the first thing I know. All right. So what does that mean? Term 6 is simply a plus 5 times the difference. All right. Term 3 is equal to a plus 2 times the difference. All right. And so on. So that's what I know so far. All right. I also know that term 6 is negative 3x minus 10 over 2. Term 3 is 3x minus 4 over 2. Alrighty. I know the common difference is 3. And I need to find out the value of x. Or I need to show that x is equal to negative 4. Here's a bit of a problem, though. I did not know what x is, and I do not know what a is. They have not given me a. So, what do you do if you have two unknowns? Can you please state it for me in the chat? So I know that I do not know what A is, and I do not know what X is. So what should I do if I have two unknowns? Remember, if you're struggling to see the screen, try and exit the chat and rejoin the chat. Very, very good. You don't equate them. You use simultaneous equations, guys. All right. That can help you so much. So what I'm going to do is I already know that term 6 is a plus 5d, term 3 is a plus 2d. So what I'm going to do is there's many ways you can do simultaneous equations. One of the ways is I want to get rid of this a, so I'm going to subtract these two equations from each other. So this becomes term 6 minus term 3 is equal to, now look, my a's are going to cancel. 5d minus 2d, that is just 3d. All right? So therefore, term 6 minus term 3 is equal to 3 times 3, which is 9. Okay, now I can figure out what x is. All right, so I'm going to take everything over here. So term 6, that's negative 3x minus 10 over 2 minus 3x minus 4 over 2 is equal to 9. All right, now here's the thing. Both of my fractions have the same denominator, so I can put them all in the same, like I can put them all under the same denominator. So this becomes negative 3x minus 10 minus, now in brackets, I put 3x minus 4. Guys, please do not forget your distribution laws. Divided by 2 is equal to 9. I'm going to simplify. I take the 2 the other side. I take it this side. And I get that negative 3x minus 10 minus 3x plus 4 is equal to 18. All right. I solve this and I get that negative 6x. 10 minus 4. Yeah, that is negative 6. So that becomes minus 6 is equal to 18. All right. So therefore, negative 6x, if I take the negative 6 the other side, I get that that is equal to 24. And therefore, x is equal to negative 4. All right. And Bob is your uncle. All righty. I saw someone making fun of me in that chat. Okay. Do you guys all understand so far? Okay. All righty. So 2.2, I see there's some questions in the chat. Don't worry, I'm going to get to that. Don't worry, don't worry. So 2.3.2 asks, hence calculate the first term of the series. Well, we know that A is going to be term 1. All right. In this case, they did not say that we were starting at any other term. So we know that A for this is going to be term 1. All right. So what do I know? Well, in the previous calculation, I know that term 3 is equal to a plus 2d, and term 6 is equal to a plus 5d. I know what d is, I also know what x is, so I can actually use any one of these two equations to figure out what the first term is, okay? In this case, I'm going to just use, just let me find the answer quickly. I'm just going to use term 3, okay? So term 3 was equal to 3x minus 4 over 2. We know that x is already equal to negative 4, so that becomes 3 times negative 4, which is negative 12, minus 4 over 2, so the answer here is negative 8. All right? So therefore, negative 8 is equal to my first term, which is a, plus 2 times 3. All right? So I'm using this equation over here in case you are a little bit lost. And all I need to do is I need to solve for a. So therefore, a is simply equal to negative 14. And therefore, term 1 is equal to negative 14. Alrighty. Do we all understand? Let's see your answer. I see positive 14. No, 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 no. Under. It is negative 14. Okay. Please do not forget that negative sign. You will lose silly marks. Okay. Here's a good question. All right. Determine the sum of the second set of 30 terms of this series. So guys, what did you get for this answer? For 2.3.3, you can answer in the chat for me. Okay, post your answers in the chat. Ooh. Making good time. Okay, okay. See, now what I don't understand is why do many people complain that maths is so difficult and yet all of you guys are getting the answers correct? Is there like something I'm missing here? Okay, so yes, that is the correct answer. All right, so let's go through it. Now, the key to doing well in maths is to actually read the questions properly. When I first answered this question, I got it completely wrong because when I read over it very, very quickly. And then I was like, determine the sum. And I just saw 30 terms and I was like, oh, it's just the sum of the first 30 terms. Please, guys, don't be like me. Read the question very carefully. So, what is it asking? It's asking determine the sum of the second set of 30 terms. So let's look over here. So I started term one. All right. Here are my first 30 terms up to term 30. All right. I want to know what's the sum of the next set of 30 terms. So basically what I'm going to do is I want to figure out what's the sum of my next set. So what's going to be this n term over here? It's going to be 60. All right. There's 30 terms over here, 30 terms over here. Done. That's what I know. Now I want to figure out what is the sum of these terms over here. So this is how you do it. All right. The sum of the next 30 terms is equal to the sum of the first 60 terms minus, or sorry, the sum of the 60 terms minus the sum of the 30 terms. All right. And we know for an arithmetic sequence, the sum of n is n over 2 times 2a plus n minus 1 times my difference. Okay, that's what I know. So in order to find what the sum of these terms are, I simply take the sum of all 60 terms and I subtract it from the sum of the first 30 terms. All right. I hope that does make sense. Okay. So therefore, this becomes, so I'm just going to combine everything. This becomes the first 60 terms. I'm going to start with this one. This becomes 60 over 2 times 2a, which is 2 times negative 14 plus, well, n minus 1, that's 60 minus 1, that's just 59. 59 times the common difference, which was 3. And I subtracted from the sum of the first 30 terms. That is just 30 over 2 times 2 times negative 14, all right, plus, well, the n terms is 30, so n minus 1, that's just 29 times the common difference, which is 3. And therefore, the sum of the next 30 terms is simply equal. You type this all onto your calculator and you get 3,585. And Bob is your uncle. Alrighty. So Courtney, I see you got 885. That's what I got first, because I only did the sum of the first 30 terms. I didn't read the question properly. So please, guys, make sure you read it properly and even draw yourself a little picture to help you understand. Okay? Alrighty. That's it. Okay, guys, so this is question 3, but before I go, I want to see, are you guys still keeping up? Are we still fine or everything? Is there anything you would like to ask me any further? I will give you 2 minutes to try and ask your questions if you have any. And in that 2 minutes, I'm just going to read the statements that some of the other people posted in the chat. Okay, so you guys can feel free to ask any questions now for the next 2 minutes. Okay, guys. So I've gone through some of the questions. There was one or two that popped up and said that asked like, if you get the first question wrong, will you be marked on the follow-up questions? No. If you get 2.1.1 wrong, however, and the question requires you to use that answer from 2.2.1 in the next questions, they use continuous assessment, which means that they will use that incorrect answer and they will just mark the other ones right. So if you get the first question wrong, but the other three using that answer that you got in the first question are correct, you would have gotten the marks for the other questions. All right. It's called continuous assessment. Okay. Yes. So hopefully that is it. Guys, I see some of you are asking me to re-explain. Don't worry, this video is recorded, so we will make this recordings available. So you may just replay the video, even try and attempt these questions again yourself if you got it wrong, and see if you can figure it out. All right. Remember, making a mistake, there's still an opportunity to learn. Okay. So question 3, we are going now into functions. All right. So I see most of us did answer some of us did answer the question. It says given that f of x is 2 divided by x minus 3 minus 1 and g of x is x minus 3. For 3.1.1 says write down the domain of f. All right, so you guys can say there's two ways you write it. Remember domain, I always think of something, I don't know if you guys maybe are too young to remember this, but remember that channel Disney XD? Right, that was like the channel for more of the boys. The girls would watch Disney and the boys would watch Disney XD. All right, so XD, X is for domain. So guys, here you can say that X is any real value, but X is not equal to positive 3. All right, that's the first way. Another way you write it is D is equal to this. X is such, so you go X is a line, X is not equal to positive 3, and that's it. All right. So these are your two ways. I'm sure most people get taught like this, but this is like also another standard way that people write the domain, right? So you can say that X is such that X is not equal to 3, or you could have said the first method, which is X is any real value, but X is not equal to 3. All righty. So pretty simple. Okay. Someone said a go-to channel. Anyways, moving on. All right, calculate the x-intercept of f. Guys, remember x-intercept. So we know that firstly, f of x, before I even get to that, is equal to 2 over x minus 3 minus 1. And we want to find the x-intercept. So the x-intercept, remember, you make y equal 0. And this is, remember, this is our y. So therefore, 0 is equal to 2 over x minus 3 minus 1. So 1 is equal to 2 over x minus 3. So therefore, x minus 3 is equal to 2, and therefore x is equal to 5. There we go. So therefore, my x-intercept is, I'm going to say 5 and 0. Now, what I want to do is, I'm just going to put a little block over here, and I'm just going to find the y-intercept. Guys, when doing functions, it's really good to find both x and y-intercepts because you never know. They might require you to draw a graph, and you need to know both intercepts to get the marks. All right. So sometimes it's good to just write on an extra piece of paper both intercepts, even if the questions don't ask you to. Just do both intercepts, and then you can use it later on. So this is for the y-intercept. Y-intercept, remember, you make x equals 0. All right. So therefore, y is equal to 2 over, well, 0 minus 3, that's just a negative 3 minus 1. All right, so therefore, y is equal to negative 5 over 3, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, negative 5 over 3. All right, so that's the value of our y-intercept, okay? Just so we know what we weren't asked to calculate the y-intercept, but just in case I need it, it's there for me, all right? If you don't need it, oh well, but if you need it, there it is. And look over here. It says draw the graphs f and g on the same set of axes. Clearly show all intercepts with the axes as well as your asymptotes. All right. And it's for easy, very easy 5 marks. Okay. So I'm first going to start with my asymptotes. All right. The first asymptote is at y is equal to -1. The next one is at x is equal to +3. All right, those are the asymptotes. Now I'm also dealing with g, all right, which is a straight line. So g of x is equal to x minus 3. So I need to first also figure out, okay, what is the x and y intercept for g? I firstly know that the y-intercept is going to be -3, so the y-int is equal to -3. And for the x-intercept, I just make y equals 0, and I get x minus 3 is equal to 0, so therefore x is equal to +3. And if you draw it, it would look something like this. This is the x-intercept for my straight line, which is at +3, and this is the y-intercept, which is at -3. Now I can draw my hyperbola. It would look something like this. Oops. All right, like that, and something like that. All right. We know that the y-intercept for this function, oops. Let me just redraw this quickly. I did forget to add the x-intercept. Okay. So we know that the y-intercept for my function was -5/3. So that's over here, -5/3. And my x-intercept is over here at +5. All right. And there is your function. All right. They are both of your functions drawn on the same set of axes. All right. And this is a very, very easy 5 marks on a plate. Okay. All right. Moving on. Okay. Very easy marks. Very simple. Calculate the values for which for which f of x is greater than or equal to g of x if x is greater than or equal to 3. Okay, so guys, what did you get for 3.4? You can post your answers in the chat. Okay. Remember, guys, this is an inequality. Okay, sorry about that. I will start slowing down a bit. Yes, you can use a calculator, especially when you are doing trig graphs, all right? Your best friend when drawing trigonometric graphs or your calculator, all right? But for normal functions in paper 1, you don't really need a calculator, but definitely for trig graphs. Okay, so let's figure out this answer, all right? I see a few different answers, all right? So, number 1, you need to ask, what is this section asking? What is that asking? Can someone please explain to me, what do they mean when they say f of x is greater than or equal to g of x? What does that mean? Okay, who can tell me that? Sometimes it's very important to understand what they are asking before you answer the question, right? Because if you understand what they are asking, you know how to answer the question a lot easier. Thank you, Connor. So Connor said, where the hyperbola is above the straight line. Good. So I know what this thing is asking over here. What is that if x is greater than or equal to 3? What does that mean? That simply means if I go back to my function, take out my calculator, my highlighter, it means I only need to focus on values that's equal to 3 or greater than 3. So I only need to focus on this section of the graph. All right. Any other section I ignore because they said that you only need to focus if x is greater than or equal to 3. So this section over here, this is where I need to focus. Okay. This is my section. And like someone said, we need to look at the part of the graph where my hyperbola is above my straight line. So if I look, I see, oh, between 3 and infinity, my hyperbola is above my straight line graph over here, all right, between these 2 points, between 3 and whatever point this is, okay? Whatever point, I'm going to call this A. A is the point, X and Y. So if I know this point, I can tell you the values of X for which my function F, which is my hyperbola, is above my graph G, all right? So, number 1, I first need to figure out what are the points of intersection. Remember, For points of intersection, we make the two functions equal to each other. So f of x is equal to g of x. All right? So therefore, 2 over x minus 3 minus 1 is equal to x minus 3. All right? So now you solve for that. You get 2 over x minus 3 is equal to x minus 2. All right? So therefore, 2 is equal to x minus 2, x minus 3. So therefore, x minus 2 is equal to 2, or x minus 3 is equal to 2. Is that correct? No, guys, please do not do that, okay? Never. It only works if that other side is equal to 0. A lot of kids make this mistake. And the thing is, if you make an error like that, they stop marking. So if you do a 6-mark question and one of your first steps is a wrong mathematical technique, they stop marking and you get 0 immediately. Okay, so please, guys, don't make that silly mistake. Okay, so that means if you just multiply these brackets out, you get 2 is equal to what's this? X squared minus 5x plus 6. So therefore, 0 is equal to x squared minus 5x plus 4. Okay, I'm taking it over here. So therefore, 0 is equal to, this becomes x minus 4, x minus 1. So therefore, x is equal to 1 and 4. So what have I done now? I have found the points of intersections in my function. All right, so this is the first point of intersection, which is 1. That's the second point, which is 4. And I also know that between 3 and 4, f of x is above g of x. So what does it mean? Remember, the question is asking for which values of x will graph f be greater than graph g. So therefore, it can be between positive 3, x, and 4. Now, here's the thing. Once you do that, you go look at what they're asking. They want greater than or equal to. Now, let's look over here. Over at this point over here, at that intercept, I know that those two functions can be equal to each other because they've specified that. What about 3? Here's the thing. G of x is equal to 3, all right, because it actually cuts at point 3, but f of x is not equal to 3. There is no x value that exists for f of x at 3, all right? So your final answer should look something like this. The second way you could state is x is an element of curly brackets because we're not including 3, 3, and 4. So it can be any number between 3 and 4. Right? Remember, we do get such things as decimal numbers. So that's your answer. Do you guys understand? And Bob's your uncle. All right? For that person making fun of me. I hope they make the exams very difficult this time. Yes, you can. That's actually how you get the answer, by looking at the graph, right? You just had to figure out what that point of intersection was. But if that point of intersection was given to you, you could have just written the answer and you would have gotten the marks, okay? But for this question, you just had to do the calculation first, all right, and then write your answer down. Okay? Guys, don't worry. I see people saying stuff about the group. The groups have reached their maximum capacity, most of them, but please don't worry. I will send this out via email, okay? Hopefully we all have emails. Moving on. Question 4, okay? It says the graph of the functions f of x, which is that term over there, and g of x, which is that, are drawn below, all right? So there are two functions. This is an exponential function, e for exponential, and this is a parabola, or parabola, all right? And they give you some information. They say that A and B, and they give you the coordinates for B, are the x-intercepts of F, C is the y-intercept of F, P is the turning point of F. The graphs intersect at B. The asymptote of G is tangent to F at the turning point. So basically that means that the asymptote is basically equal to the y value of this turning point because they're basically all touching each other, all right? So the y value of P is equal to the asymptote for graph G. All right, so don't worry, guys. If you have missed the answers, you will see it in the recordings, okay? So 4.1 asks, write down the equation of the axis of symmetry of the parabola f. All right. So remember, your axis of symmetry cuts your parabola into two halves. All right. So what is the equation for the axis of symmetry? All right. So remember, let's look at our original function. I'll just write it over here. Let me just get out the equation. Okay, so we know that for f of x, they've written it in this form. All right. A times x plus 3 squared plus q. So I immediately know when you ever see it in this point, it means that the turning point, which is point P, is the point negative 3. All right. It's always the opposite. And Q. All right. There. So I know that the value for point P over here is negative 3 and Q. Okay. That's what I know. I'm just going to rub it out. Okay. If you ever see it in this form, the value of this and the value of that is your turning points. Okay. Hopefully you've learned about that. Just give me a second. There we go. Just going to erase this all out. Okay. So I firstly know that the x value for P is negative 3. Remember, that point P is also right in the middle of your center of, or your axis of symmetry. All right. Hope that makes sense. So therefore, your axis of symmetry is simply x is equal to 3. All right, it's that horizontal line that cuts through P at x is equal to 3. All right. Now we need to determine the equation of f in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, how did I do that? Well, I have the y value, or sorry, the y-intercept. I have one of the x-intercepts. I have a little bit of my turning points. But what about this? Can I figure out what this x-intercept is? The answer is yes. All right. I know that the x value for this, for point P, is negative 3. So this is negative 3. And I know that the x value for B is negative 1. Now, what's the distance between negative 3 and 1? I think we can all agree that's 2 units. All right. It's 2. Sorry, it's negative 3. All right. And that x is equal to negative 3. Very good, guys. That's negative 3. So I know that the distance between P and B is simply 2 units, all right? They're 2 units apart. So what's going to be the distance between P and A? Remember, P is your axis of symmetry, so it cuts everything perfectly in half. So that means that the distance from P and A is also 2 units. All right, so what does that mean? That means that the x value of A is simply negative 5 and 0. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So A is the point negative 5. So I'm going to write over here. A is the point negative 5 and 0. B is the point negative 1 and 0. So now I know what my x-intercepts are. All right. Remember that axis of symmetry splits your graph perfectly in half. So therefore, I can say that y is equal to A, right? X plus 5. Remember, it's always the opposite sign. All right. Times x plus 1. Now remember, guys, I still do not know what A is. A tells me how wide, how narrow the graph is. Is it going up? Is it going down? We need to figure that out. So what I now do is I find another point on my parabola that's not the x-intercept, and I substitute it into this graph. What I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute point C. C, which is the point 0 and 5. So what does that mean? That means that 5, remember that's the y, that's the x. So 5 is equal to A times x, which is 0, plus 5, 0 plus 1. So this is just 5 is equal to 5A, and therefore A is equal to 1. So therefore, y is equal to x plus 5, x minus 1. And what do you do now? You just multiply everything out, and therefore you get that this is equal to x squared plus 4x minus 5, if I'm not mistaken. Plus 1. Sorry, this is plus 1. So this is plus 5 plus 6x. All right, there we go. And there is your answer. Do you guys understand that? Right? Very easy. You just had to figure out this part. Okay, I'm just going to rub it all out over here, this section over here. All right, your axis of symmetry. And they've even given you a clue. All right, the previous question, they asked you to calculate the axis of symmetry. They would not do it for giggles. They do it for a reason. You actually had to use that when answering the next question. So guys, be very vigilant for that. Try and look for those little clues that they give you in your exams. Okay. So are we all fine? Are we all still surviving? So guys, remember, we will make the video available on YouTube. All right. So yes. All right. You will get the videos on YouTube. All right. Now remember, guys, this axis of symmetry is at x is equal to -3. So what you do now, you go, okay, what's the distance between this point and B? All right. You can see it's simply 2 units. All right. -3 to -1, that's 2 units. Now the distance between this point and B is going to be exactly the same as the distance from this point to A. So this will be 2 units to the left. All right. So this will cut at -5. All right. And that's what we do. And then we solve for x using these steps. Remember, guys, if you don't understand, you can just watch the video again and play it a little bit slower. Okay. Moving on. Let me just write over here. 4.3 says, hence, show that the equation of the asymptote is given by y is equal to -4. Clearly show all your calculations. Well, I already know that P is the point -3 and y. All right. So all I need to do is I just need to substitute back into my original equation. So I know that f of x is equal to x squared plus 6x plus 5. So what I want to know is what is the value of my function when x is equal to -3? All I do is I substitute -3 into my equation. All right, you substitute all of that, and then what you will get is y is equal to -4. All right, a very easy one more, guys. You don't even have to go into so much detail. Okay, 4.4 asks, I always love these questions. When they ask you like these inequality questions. Determine the values of x for which f prime of x is times g of x is greater than 0. All right. So when is the derivative of x multiplied by g greater than 0? What did you guys get for that answer? Yeah, so if you get a breakdown, right? So if you I think what you're asking is if what you are writing becomes incorrect, you will only get like they will stop marking at that point where your math is wrong. So you will get the other 2 marks for the question. They won't give you naught for the entire question. They just stop marking where you start screwing up, basically. You know? Okay. So okay, I'm seeing very good answers here. I still don't understand why we think maths is so difficult. Right? You guys are doing very well, and congratulations to those people who are answering. You are definitely going to get 90%. Now, remember, when you see a question like this, guys, people get a big fright when they see that. That simply means the gradient. All right. Remember, your derivative is essentially your gradient. So this is your gradient or your slope. Okay. So what's this question asking? It's basically saying, when is the slope of graph f multiplied by the y value of graph g, when is that greater than 0? Or when is this positive? So what do we know about multiplications and positives? All right. We know that firstly, a positive multiplied by a positive is equal to positive. All right. Plus times a plus gives you a plus. On top of that, we also know that a minus multiplied by a minus gives you a positive as well. Right. I hope those two make sense. Positive multiplied by a positive is a positive. Minus multiplied by a minus is a positive. I know that so far. Now, what I need to do is I go, okay, I need to now look for parts of the graph where the gradient of function f is negative or positive. Remember, if the gradient is positive, it looks like that. If the gradient is negative, it looks like that. Okay? And I also need to look for parts of the function or parts of the graphs where my y value for g of x is a positive, meaning when is it above the x axis? So let's try and answer this. All right. I'm going to approach the graph from the negative side. So from this side, from the left. When I approach the graph, I immediately see that the slope of my function is going downwards. So my gradient is negative. So I'm going to focus on this part first. So my gradient is negative, check. Now I need to find the points of the function where my y value is negative. But there's a bit of an issue, all right? Remember, this graph does extend further out. As I approach from this point, I can see that the y value for graph G is positive. So this is going to be a positive, which is incorrect because now a negative times a positive, that's going to give me a negative. I do not want that. I want both to be negatives. So I can't use this method, all right? Right, no matter where I go, I can't use that method. Now I'm going to so I approach the graph, I get to point A, I can see that at point A, the slope here is negative, but the y value for G is a positive, so I can't go. So I keep going, and I get to point B, all right? Oh, sorry, point P. At point P, as I go past point P, I notice that the graph points upwards. Plus, look over here. The y value for G is above 0. So what does it mean? My gradient is positive and the y value for G is a positive. And that keeps happening until I get to point B. When I move past point B, the gradient of graph F is a positive, but the y value for graph G is now less than 0. It's a negative, all right? Which means that the only point in my entire function, I'll just get out my highlighter so we can see a bit easier. The only point in this entire graph where the gradient is a positive and g of x is also a positive, right, is, let me just get out a highlighter, is between point P and point B. It's only this point. Look, because look, here's my positive y value for graph G, and I can see that my gradient is pointing upwards. So therefore, the gradient is also positive. All right. So what does that mean? That means that the only point where the gradient multiplied by the y value of G is a positive is in between -3 and -1. So therefore, it's -3 x and -1. Now, can it be equal to? No. Remember, the original equation is saying greater than 0, not equal to. So we don't have to put the equal to signs. You could have also said this. X is any real value, -3 and -1. Okay, so those are your two options. Do we all understand? All right. So what if I derive a rough sketch? So if you use, yeah, you can use the graph to answer, or you can just maybe show where it is, but you actually have to write out the value. You can't just draw a graph and just highlight the part where it is, you actually have to go write out the actual value, okay? Hope that makes sense. Okay, remember, we are only focusing on the x values, okay? So here at -3 and here at -1, that is where this statement is true. All right? Okay, almost done, guys. We're going to just do question 5, and then we'll take about a 15-minute break. How much time do we have? Yeah, about a 15-minute break. Okay. So it says here graph G. So G of X, just in case we didn't know, G of X I think, did we calculate it? No. Okay, let's first calculate what G of X is. All right, so we know that, let's just see something. Okay, no. Let's ignore this quickly. Let's just see what the question is saying. It says the graph G is shifted 4 units up, all right, to give a new function h, all right? determine the equation of h minus 1, which is the inverse of h in the form of y is equal to. So what I'm first going to do is, let's first figure out what is the equation of g of x. So we know that g of x was equal to m to the power of negative x plus k. But here's the thing. I'm just going to clear up this slide, or just let's just erase all of this nonsense over here. Okay, so we know that the y value for my turning point, this was -3 and -4. We knew that the y value of this turning point was the same as the asymptote for g. So I immediately know that therefore g of x was equal to m to the power of negative x minus 4. All right? That's what I knew originally. Okay? So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to now figure out what is the equation of g first. All right? And what you do is you substitute any other point on g. And I'm going to substitute this point over here. So I'm going to substitute -1 and 0, because I first want to figure out what is the equation of g before I answer anything else. Okay, that becomes 0 is equal to m to the power of -1 minus 4. So therefore yeah, righty, yeah, oh sorry, m to the power of, oops, I've done this now, a mistake, sorry guys, give me a second. It's been a very long day. Okay, so it's m to the power of negative. I'm going to put in brackets -1, because that's the value of x, right? It's negative times -1 minus 4 is equal to 0. So 4 is equal to m to the power of 1. So therefore m is equal to 4. So I know that the equation of g of x is simply 4 to the power of -x minus 4. And there we go. Okay, so now I know what the equation of g is, okay? Now here's the thing. What did they say? They said that g was shifted 4 units upwards. So this, if you shifted 4 units upwards, you just add 4. And look, these cancel, and therefore g of x is simply equal to 4 to the power of -x. Okay? That's the first thing done. Bam. Okay. So now what can I do? I need to figure out the inverse. All right? Or this was actually h of x. I need to now figure out what is the inverse of this function. All right. So I'm just going to do it over here. Just make a little block over here. So remember, for h, the inverse, all right, remember you just simply swap the y and the x values. So know that x is equal to 4 to the power of -y. Now, how do I figure this thing out? Remember, you use your logs. So therefore, how do I do this? So therefore, -y is equal to log. Now, what must I do now? Remember, this is the base. So this becomes log base of x. So therefore, y is simply negative log base 4 of x. And that is your final answer. All right? Do you guys understand? Right, so we first had to figure out what is the equation of g of x. Once we figured out the equation of g of x, we could figure out what h of x was, plus then figure out what the inverse was. All right? Okay, perfect. Almost done. Last question, and then we're going to take a little bit of a break. This is luckily a shorter question. So, okay, before I even start with that, it says over here, in the diagram, the graphs f, which is equal to 3. So this over here is simply y is equal to 3. And g of x, which is the square root of x, for all positive x values are given below. All right, so this is g of x, and then we have f of x over here. The y-intercept of f is 0 and 3. So here is 0 and 3, and n is the point of intersection of the graphs. All right, over here. That's what we have been given. So what is the range of g? -1. Ooh. So guys, we first actually have to figure out what is the inverse of g of x. So we know that g of x is equal to the square root of x. All right, so y is equal to the square root of x. So therefore, for g minus 1, we know that x, also I must put in my constraints, for x is greater than or equal to 0. So therefore, x is simply the square root of y. Okay? And therefore, what we do is we square both sides, and therefore y is simply x squared. All right, for all positive values of x. So g prime of x would look something like this. And we want to know what is the range. So therefore, the range, this is how you write it, y is such that y is greater than or equal to 0. Or you could have just said that y is greater than or equal to 0. All right, so we first find what the inverse function is, and then you can state that y is greater than or equal to 0. Or you could have just drawn it, because you can realize that this would have looked something like that, and you could have written it down like that. Remember, it's only 1 mark. Okay. That could have been, yeah. You could have done that as well. That's a very good method. So you could find first the domain, and then the domain becomes the range for the inverse. That's actually a very good method. Okay. Anyways, moving on. Determine the coordinates of n. Remember, n is where g and f intersect. Remember? So remember, when your functions intercept, simply f of x is equal to g of x. All right? You make your two equations equal to each other. So the square root of x is equal to 3, and therefore x is equal to 9. So therefore, the point of intersection for n, remember, we're not done yet, is 9 and 3. We always have to write down the coordinates if they ask you to write the coordinates. Okay? You can't write y. So someone asks, can we write y as any real value? No. Remember, y, the range is only for 0 to positive infinity. Nothing below 0 exists, right? And if you say y is any real value, you're implying that y can be any number between a negative infinity and positive infinity. So yes, unfortunately, if you wrote y as any real value, you would have gotten it wrong. It's y is greater than or equal to 0. Okay? It will only be any real value if it's basically going from negative infinity to positive infinity. Okay? I hope that made sense to the person who asked. Okay, moving on. 5.3 asks, yeah, determine the equation of the reflection of G in the form, determine the equation. Let me just read here. I can't see it properly on the screen. Determine the equation of the reflection of G in the line y is equal to x in the form of y is equal to ... Guys, this is basically your inverse function, and we already calculated that, okay? So y was originally equal to the square root of x. Remember, this is now a reflection in the line y is equal to x. So this this is for our original function. So therefore, for the inverse function, we know that x is equal to the square root of y. And remember, we need to put in that constraint that they gave us. All right? Don't forget about that. And therefore, y is equal to x squared for x is greater than or equal to 0. Right? If you didn't put that in there, you could have lost marks, eh? Make sure you put in that constraint that they told you in the beginning. All right? Guys, the memo for this paper is found on a place called testpapers.com. Okay? Now, guys, that is the halfway point for our question paper. Do you mind if we take about a 10-minute break? You guys can use the same link for the meeting. You don't even have to exit. You can just leave your screen on. We're going to take about a 10-minute break, and we're going to come back. But is everyone surviving so far? Are we, is everything going well so far? Do we understand everything so far? Someone said no. Well, it's not your choice, not your lesson. Not the one that's been talking for almost an hour. Okay, perfect. So, guys, since we're surviving, we're going to take about a 10-minute break and we're going to get back into the swing of things. Okay, guys, so welcome back, everyone. Apologies for that. I meant 1505, not 1605, but I think we all knew what I was saying. Sorry about that. Anyways, yeah, we are now moving on to question 6. Now, question 6 is always the financial maths section, righty? So hopefully we can do it well. Remember, I never really liked financial maths, but many kids do quite well in it. I just never liked it. Anyways, let's get started, all right? We have just an hour left. It says over here, determine how long it would take for an investment of 2,000 Rand to grow to 45,000 Rand in an account earning interest at 7.5% per annum compounded monthly. Now remember that compounded is a very important clue. And they also state, give your answer to the nearest month. So I first know that the equation for compound is A is equal to P, 1 plus I to the power of N. Now I know A is what the thing is worth now, which is 45,000 Rand. P is my original amount, which is 20,000 Rand. And my interest, I, is 7.5, which is 0.075 divided by 12. All right, that's what I know so far. I need to figure out what N is equal to, and I need to round it off to the nearest month. Okay, this becomes quite easy. So it becomes 45, 1, 2, 3 is equal to 20,000, right? 1 plus 0.075 over 2 to the power of N. Okay, you divide both sides by 20,000, you get that 2.25 is equal to 1 plus 0.075 over 2 to the power of N. Now, to get N on its own, I need to do logs, all right? So therefore, N is equal to log. Now, what's your base? Your base is that thing right next to N, which is 1 plus 0.075 over 2, and we go 2.25. All right. Now what you do, you type that all on your calculator and you get that N is equal to, if you do the math, it's like 130 point something, something, something. Now remember, we're dealing with payments, all right? So what's going to happen is this person is going to pay for 130 months, and then for the final month, he's going to make like a partial payment, all right? So, well, this thing is going to grow for 130 months, and then for 1 month, it's going to be like a slight increase, all right? So therefore, you round off to the closest month, which is 131. So therefore, N is about 131 months, all right? Do you guys all understand? Someone say it's incorrect. You know, you don't divide by 12 because they said for the nearest month, all right? Yeah, so you round up to the closest month, all right? Well, not really the closest month, you round off to the next month, basically. And you don't divide by 12 because they said month. If they wanted the number of years, then you would have divided by 12, all right? Hopefully that makes sense. So let me just read it over here. It says, for 6.2, the depreciation of office equipment is represented by the graph below. E is the value of the equipment in rands, and N is the number of years the equipment is being used. All right, and there's a little graph over here. Now, 6.2.1 asks, what does the y-intercept of my function indicate? So guys, please answer that question for me. What does the y-intercept indicate? It's one easy mark. Who can tell me what does that y-intercept indicate? Doesn't really indicate n. Look where the y-intercept is. It's when n is equal to 0. Very good. It's the original value. All right. So it's the origi, original value. All right. Now, according to the model, all right, will the value of the equipment ever become 0? Can you guys explain that for me? Will, for 6.2.2 asks, will the value of this equipment ever become 0? Yes or no? Looking at the graph. Oh, yes, you're absolutely correct. Sorry, that is 12. Okay, that's 12, that's a 12, that's a 12. All right, good eye, right? It's 12. Apologies for that. I thought you were talking about this answer. Why don't you divide by 12? Sorry about that. So yes, guys, for this question here, it's no. All right, remember this is an exponential function. And basically that x-axis is an asymptote. So the x-axis is an asymptote. All right. That is why it will get very, very close to zero. And after a certain amount of years, it'll be so small you can assume it's zero, but it never ever touches zero. It gets infinitely closer to zero, but never ever reaches it. All right. And yes, you guys are all correct. This is an exponential function, and your x-axis is basically an asymptote. All right. Okay. Calculate the rate of depreciation. All right. For 6.2.3. Can you guys post the answer for me in the chat? So someone asked how. What do you mean by how, Precious? Can you just explain or expand your question in the group? But for the rest of you, what was the answer you got for 6.2.3? Very good, 18%. Well done. So remember, for those of you who don't understand, A, you can immediately see this is an exponential curve. So I know immediately I am using my compound formula, all right? If it was a straight line, all right, that would have been your other method, right? But for your simple interest method, all right? But for compound, it's this one. It's this equation. 1, I, and N. Now, here's the thing. Remember, you are decreasing, all right? The value is decreasing, so it's 1 minus I to the power of N, all right? And all I need to do is I need to find R, and I need to use these points on the graph, all right? So at year 2, remember N is the number of years, the value of my product was this amount. At year 6, the value of the product was this amount. So the current value at year 6 is 48,033. The original value is 106,239 Rand. All right. 1 minus, now what's my interest? The interest was, we don't know. The rate of depreciation, we do not know. And what's the amount of time? Well, to go from 2 until 6, that is 4 years. So my amount of time is 4 years. And all I need to do now is I need to figure out what the value of R is. All right. So what do? You divide both sides by 106,000 and you get that 0.45212. And for the decimals, now you see what I'm doing here, guys. I'm not rounding off. I only round off at the very end. Rounding off midway through calculations can throw your answer off by a large amount, all right? So always round off at the very end. And that is equal to 1 minus r to the power of 4. Okay, and 1 minus r is equal to 0.82, all right? And therefore, r is equal to 0.18, or you can say that r is equal to 18%. And there we go. Okay, so moving on. 6.3 asks, what does it say? It says, Herman purchases a loan, plans to purchase a house for 2,464,000. You will take out a loan for the full amount for 30 years at 10.2% per annum compounded monthly. All right. Calculate what his monthly installments will be if he is required to repay the bank equal amounts at the end of each month. Alrighty. So what do I know? Number one, I know that he takes out a loan. What do I Hi guys, apologies. So the Wi-Fi just went out, but don't worry, it does appear to be back. Can you guys all see and hear what I'm saying? Okay, so don't worry. I'm just gonna share. Sorry guys. Yeah, the Wi-Fi just cut out quickly, so don't worry. I'm just gonna reshare everything. Okay, give me a second. Oops. I'm gonna share now. Can we all see what I'm busy sharing? You can just say yes or no. Okay. But don't worry, guys. We're going to start this question again. Okay, so remember, this person wants to buy a house for about 2 million rand, 2,400,000 rand. He will take a loan for about 30 years at 10.2% per annum compounded monthly. Remember, a loan, when you go to the bank, you get the loan on the day. So I know that this is a present value formula. I know the equation is x is equal to 1 minus 1 plus I to the power of negative n divided by I. I know that the present value is this amount, 2,464,000. All right. I know that my number of years, my interest I is 0.102 divided by 12 because it's compounded monthly, and n is simply 30 times 12. All right. They said nothing about him skipping payments or finishing the payments early. So he's going to pay at the end of each month for the next 30 years. All right. So n will be about 360. All right. So that's the amount of payments he's going to be making over that period of time. All right. So let's get started. So we need to find out what must x be equal to. So what I'm going to do is, this is a very simple calculation. You simply say that 264 million, 2 million, 2,464,000 is equal to x times 1 minus 1 plus 0.102 over 12 to the power of negative, do not forget that negative sign, guys, 360 over my interest, which is 0.102 over 12. All right, guys. And all you do now is you solve for x. So x is equal to 2,464,000 times 0.102 over 12 divided by that whole bracket at the bottom. So that's 1 minus 1 plus 0.102 over 12 to the power of negative 360. You type that all on your calculator and you get that x, or the monthly payments that he makes, is 21,988 rand and 40 cents. And there is your final answer. Okay? Do you guys understand? You guys all see what I'm busy writing down? All right. If you are struggling, if you can't see the slide, exit the chat and rejoin the chat. Okay? Okay. Perfect. Now, the next one. All right. It says over here, instead of paying the bank's stipulated amount calculated in the previous question, Herman decides to pay the loan by 22,500 rand instead. All right. At the end of every month. Calculate the balance outstanding on the loan immediately after he pays his 84th payment. So guys, what was your answer for 6.3.2? You guys can post your answer in the chat for me. Yeah, so present value is PV and future value is FV. And yeah, the equations are also different, but luckily the equations are given to you in your formula sheet. Okay. Okay. I'm seeing a lot of answers. Okay, guys. So the way I do outstanding balance, I prefer the the present value formula way. All right. So I do it like this. My outstanding balance is x1 minus 1 plus I to the power of negative n over I. And n is equal to the number of payments left. Okay. That's the method that and I really suggest that you do this value because it's 1,000 times easier than using the future value method. So if you haven't learned this method, please pay attention. All right. So yeah, n is the number of payments he has left if you use this formula. Okay. Calculate the balance outstanding loan after he makes his 84th payment. All right. So how many payments does he have left? Remember, he made a total of, he's going to make a total of 360 payments, all right? But now he's already paid 84 payments. So if you do the math, how many payments does he still have left? He still has 276 payments left, all right? So that's how much payments he has left. So what you do is you substitute everything into the equation. So this is equal to, now what's his monthly payment? Remember, he's decided to pay 22,500 Rand instead. So this is 22,500 Rand, 1 minus 1 plus 0.102. Because remember, the interest stays the same over 12. And how much does he have left? Negative. The amount of payments that he has left is 276 payments. All right. Divided by I, which is 0.102 over 12. And therefore, if you type this on your calculator, you get that the outstanding balance is 2,391,073 cents, and 73 and 84 cents. Okay, that is the balance outstanding. All right. I really prefer that you use this method, guys. It is so much easier and it saves you a lot of time and effort, and it also reduces the probability of making a mistake. All right. Because the more calculations you do, the more chances you have at making a mistake somewhere and getting the wrong answer. So guys, please try and use this method, okay? It's your present value formula, but the only difference is n is the number of payments that you have left, okay, that you still have to make, okay? Anyways, guys, that was 6.3. Do we all understand so far? Are we all still surviving? Okay, you guys all surviving? Perfect. Now, let's move on to question 7.1. So 7.1 is always your calculus questions, your derivative questions, and they always ask for the very first question in calculus, they say find f of x or f prime of x using your first principles. So when you see that word, it means you have to use this formula. F prime of x is equal to the limit as h tends to 0 of f of x plus h minus f of x, all of that divided by h. All right, guys, you have to use that formula. If you use the other method, even if you get that answer right, you're going to get 0 out of 5 because you haven't followed what the instruction is telling you. Okay, so what do I do now? Well, now I just substitute into my equation. This is equal to the limit as h tends to 0, and you see I keep writing that until the final step. Okay, so this is now f of x plus h. So all I do here is I rewrite my equation, and where I see a x, I put in an x plus h squared plus 7 minus, and in brackets, I'm going to put this original equation, all right, which is negative 3x squared plus 7. Okay, so that's the first step over h. The next step is you need to simplify this so much so that that h in the denominator cancels out with an h in the numerator. So the next step of this question is to try and cancel out that h. So this is equal to the limit as h tends to 0 of 3, negative 3 multiplied. If you multiply this out, this becomes x squared plus 2 times x, 2 times x times h plus h squared plus 7. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this minus into the bracket plus 3x squared minus 7. All of that is over h. Now what I can see immediately is I'm just going to multiply this 3 into the brackets. All right, so this is just going to become, if I multiply the 3 in, this becomes negative 3x squared minus 6x times h minus 3h squared. Alrighty, need to get my eraser of this part out. Okay, so I've done that. Now let's look over here. This negative 3x squared cancels out with that. This positive 7 cancels out with the negative 7. All right, and all I'm left with, my first derivative, is equal to the limit as h tends to 0 of negative 6 x times h minus 3h squared over h. What I do now is I factorize h tends to 0. I take out an h and I'm left with negative 6x minus 3h over h. Now look here. Once my h's cancel, I can now substitute. So what do? I substitute h is equal to 0. So therefore, my first derivative is equal to negative 6x minus 3 times 0. And therefore, the first derivative is equal to negative 6x. Now look, after I substitute into h, I then can stop writing that limit thing. All right? Does that make sense, guys? All right? It's only 5 marks. It's a very, very easy 5 marks to get. Guys, this should be where you get a lot of marks. Very easy 5 marks. Okay? So it says, what if you can't cancel h? So they would, so you asking what, so basically if you, are you saying if you get something like this, f of x is equal to 10 to the power of x, that is higher level calculus, all right? That they will never ask you that. That is something that is for undergrad university students, all right? Okay. So yeah, don't worry about writing, getting something like this. They will give you very, very easy questions, all right? Yeah, if you get something like this, then you are probably in the wrong class. You probably joined a university lecture or something. But yeah. Okay, does that make sense, guys? All right. And you can always just check your answer by using the other way to find your derivative, right? The shorter way. And if your answers are not the same, you've messed up somewhere. Okay. 7.2 asks, okay, determine the dy dx for each of the following. 7.2.1 says y is equal to 8 times the square root of x minus the square root of 21. Remember, the first step you do is I get rid of any radical signs. I put all my x's into their exponents. So this becomes y is equal to 8 times x to the power of a half minus the square root of 21. Now I find dy dx, all right? This becomes, you take this, you multiply it with the 8, that becomes 4x to the power of negative a half, and that's it, all right? Remember, this constant, it cancels out, it becomes 0, and therefore dy dx is equal to 4 over the square root of x, all right? That's if you simplify it, but guys, you could have just kept it in that form. You would have still gotten the marks, all right? Over here, what do we do now for 7.2.2? My first step is I want to get y on its own, all right? So I say that y is equal to, now divide everything by x squared, all right? So this becomes 2x, right? 2x cubed divided by x squared gives me 2x plus 4 over x squared. So therefore, y is equal to 2x plus 4x to the power of negative 2. Once I have it in the exponent forms, I then take the first derivative. So therefore, dy dx is equal to the derivative of of 2x is simply 2 plus negative 8, all right, times x to the power of negative 3. So therefore, dy dx is equal to 2 minus 8 over x cubed. All right, or you could have just said 2 minus 8 times x to the power of negative 3. All right. Very easy 7 marks over here, guys. Hopefully we all got this correct. Remember, you do not have to put it in these forms again. You could have kept it in these other forms, right? Moving on. Says over here for 7.3, calculate the value of the constant h so that the curve y is equal to hx plus x cubed will have a local maximum and x is equal to -1. So guys, what was your answer for that one? Can someone please explain? I do not know the answer for this. So what did we get for 7.3? What was your answer for h? All right. Perfect, perfect. Well done, guys. So let's see. Okay. So what are they asking? All right. They say that this function will have a local maximum and x is equal to -1. So I know that my function looks something like this. All right. And at one of the maximum, the x value is -1 and it's going to have some y value. All right. Now, okay. What do we know? By the way, guys, this local maximum is at the turning point. What do we know about turning points and calculus? The most important point we know is that the first derivative of x is equal to 0 at your turning point, right? That's very important, guys. If you do not know this, you do not know how to answer these questions, right? So I firstly know that f of x is equal to hx plus x cubed. So what does that mean? That therefore means that the first derivative is simply, the first derivative of this is just x plus 3x squared. Alrighty. Now, here's the thing. The first derivative is 0, all right, when x is equal to -1. So that means that this is 0 is equal to h plus 3 to the times -1 squared. So this therefore becomes h is equal to, or sorry, 0 is equal to h plus 3. And therefore h is equal to -3. All right? That is our answer. All right? And therefore you can just say that y is equal to x cubed minus 3x. Bam. Okay? Does that make sense, guys? Do we all understand? I see all of us got the correct answer, so I assume it. Very easy. 15 marks for question 7. Alrighty. Bob's your uncle. Now, the diagram for question 8 says the diagram below of the curves, or shows the curves of f of x is ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d. F prime of x is -3x cubed, or sorry, 3x squared plus 6x plus 9. All right. They've given you some further information. They say that the graph f prime of x intersects the axis, the x-axis, and a and b. D and E are stationary points, which is another way of saying turning points of the cubic graph f of x. -30 is the y-intercept of graph f. Okay, that's what they've given us. 8.1 says to determine the coordinates of D and E. So guys, what did you get for 8.1? Who can tell me? So guys, who can tell me what is the answer for the x coordinates for D and E? All right, all right. Perfect. All right. So let's do it again. Remember, this is our first derivative. All right. This is our original function. And these are the turning points of our original function. Okay. Now, what do we know? We know that the first derivative is equal to 0 at turning points. Turning points. All right. Now we already know what the first derivative is, right? They've firstly given it to us, and they've showed us on the graph. And where is our first derivative? 0. It's 0 at this point and at this point, at point A and point B. So basically, I need to find out for which values of x will my graph f prime be equal to 0. All right. So f prime of x is equal to -3x squared plus 6x plus 9. All right, so we make the 0 is equal to negative 3x squared plus 6x plus 9. And now you just solve for this, so you get 0. If I divide both sides by negative 3, I get that x squared minus 2x minus 3 is equal to 0. So therefore, 0 is equal to x minus 3, x plus 1. All right, and therefore, x is equal to negative 1 and positive 3. So those are the values for my turning point. All right, so D will have the turning point, negative 1 and some y value, and E will have the turning point, 3 and some y value. And if you actually look on the graph, you can see that A is directly above B and E is directly below B. All right. So these 2 points are going to have the same x values. All right. Hope that makes sense. Determine the equation of f. Now, guys, they have given us the proper equation for our derivative, and they want us to find the original value for our equation. This is a certain type of part in calculus called integration, all right? And you guys do not learn it. The kids who do technical maths, they cover it very briefly, but this is not something you learn at this level, okay? So we need to do the long method around. Basically, what you do is you do this. I know that the first derivative, which was given to me, is negative 3x squared plus 6 plus 9, all right? I also know that my original function f of x is ax squared or x cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d. What I do now is, yes, why they make us suffer? That's what I always ask myself. Now, what I do is I first find what is the derivative of this. So I go that f prime of x is equal to 3ax squared plus 2bx plus c. Now let's look over here. This value in front of my x squared must be the same as this one, all right? Because these are both the same things, all right? This value in front of my x must be the same as this one. And finally, the c value must be the same as that. So I can firstly say that c is equal to positive 9, all right? 2b must be equal to 6, so therefore b is equal to 3, all right? I know that 3a must be equal to negative 3, so therefore a is equal to negative 1. So I have now found a, b, and c. Now, what is point D? Remember, point D is my y-intercept over here. So therefore, D is equal to negative 30. And therefore, f of x is simply equal to negative x cubed plus 3x squared plus 9x minus 30. And that is your original function, all right? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Does that make sense, guys? All right. Don't worry, guys. The video will be made available, so you can actually watch it tonight when you are studying. You can watch it tomorrow when you are studying and crying before maths paper 1. All right. So, guys, don't worry. You will get the recordings available. All right. Remember, guys, remember your equation is given like this. X cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d. This is my y-intercept. They've given me the y-intercept is negative 30. So that's why D is the point negative 30, A is negative 1, B is 3, and C is positive 9. So 8.3 asks, what does 8.3 ask? It says, determine the values of x for which determine the values of x for which f is increasing. Alrighty, so when they ask what values of x is the function increasing, they basically asking where is the gradient positive? Positive. All right, that's what they're asking, right? Like I said, guys, it's very important to understand what they are telling you or what they are asking you first before you answer a question. Because if you don't know what they're asking, you cannot figure out the answer. So for which values of x is f increasing? It's basically asking for which values of f will my gradient be positive. Remember, your gradient is simply your first derivative. So basically, guys, what this question is asking is for which values of x will the first derivative, which is the gradient, be greater than 0. Now look, they've given me the graph for the first derivative, and we also know that this is the point -1, this is the point +3, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, -1 and +3. Yep. All right. So we need to know, okay, for which values of x will this be a positive? Meaning, when is this graph, or when is my parabola, which is my first derivative, above the x-axis? You can see it's above the x-axis between -1 and +3. So it's this part. So therefore, x needs to be in between -1 and +3. Or you could have said that x is any value between -1 and 3. All right, those are your two options. Does that make sense, guys? It's a very simple one. We just had to break down the question and realize that the only thing that they're asking is for which values of x is my first derivative greater than 0. All right. But remember, they asked for which values of x is the function increasing. That means for which values of x is my gradient positive, and your gradient is exactly the same as your first derivative. So essentially what 8.3 was asking is for which values of x is my first derivative greater than 0. Okay, does that make sense, caller? Okay. Almost done, guys. 2 more questions. All right. How much time do we have? We have 15 minutes. 2 more questions. Okay. Yeah. Final question asks, which values of x is the graph concave down? Alrighty. Now, I'm not even going to use the graph to answer because there's 2 things you need to remember. Number 1, for concave up, it means that your second derivative has to be greater than 0. For concave down, it means that the second derivative has to be less than 0. And we want to know for which values of x will the function be concave down. So we need to focus on this part over here. All right. So what do we know? Well, we know that the first derivative, if I just check here quickly, was -3x squared plus 6x plus 9. So what's our second derivative? Our second derivative is simply -6x plus 6. And we want to know for which values of x is this concave down. So for which values of x is this whole thing less than 0. So therefore, for which values of x is this plus 6 less than 0. So -6, x will be less than -6. So therefore, x must be greater than 1. And there we go. That is your final answer. Alrighty, and let's look over here. This over here is the point 1, and this is actually our inflection point over here. And as you can see, as I go from 1 upwards, my graph makes an unhappy face. It goes like that. All right, it goes down, so that's concave down. Any value less than 1, we are then concave up. Does that make sense, guys? Remember, you just need to remember these things. All right. You don't even have to look at the graph. Okay. Last 2 questions, and then we are finished. All right, just biting there. Okay. It says the flower pot below is in the shape of a cone. R is the radius of the base, and h is the perpendicular height of the cone. The slant height of the cone is 12 centimeters. So that's basically this height over here. That's 12 centimeters. The height of the cone is h, and the radius is r. Show that the volume of the sphere, the volume of water needed to fill the entire flower pot can be represented as that equation over there. And these are the formula that they have given us. Now, how do I know which one to use? How can I figure out which equation to use? Here's a nice little trick. You just use a simple process of elimination. The first thing I can eliminate is this one, this length times breadth times height, because we all know that's just for like a square or a rectangular prism. So I can eliminate that. Right, remember my base has a circle, so I need to deal with something that has pi and radius in it. So now I have three options to work with. This one, or this one. Now here's the thing, all right? Let's look over here. In order to determine the volume of this cone, I need to include height h. I need to have this in my volume formula. If I do not have it, it means that it's not for a cone or anything else that has a height, right? So let's look over here. This equation doesn't have h, all right? It doesn't have some form of height, which means that it cannot be a representation of the volume of the shape. This is actually the volume of a sphere. All right, so I can't use this equation. Why? Because I can see it doesn't have h in it. This other equation over here, it had h, but we all know that's the simple formula for a rectangular or square prism. So it's either this one or this one. So which one is which? Now here's the thing. Both of them have pi radius squared. So both of them are considering a base that has like a circle, right? A circular base. However, this one is just h. So this one means it's a base that has a perpendicular height like this. It goes straight up, all right? And it makes another circle, all right? That the size of my circle doesn't change. It's just going straight up, all right? So both of these circles are the same. So I know that this is for a cone. Ugh, not for a cone, for a cylinder. My final option has to be the correct one, right? The 1 over 3 pi radius square height, okay? So I know sometimes, yeah, we all forgot what the volume and area are of these different shapes, right? That's why you must try and use a process of elimination, okay? Anyways, so I know this is the same question, that the volume is equal to 1 over 3 pi radius squared height. But here's the issue. You can see that in my function over here, I have no r. So I need to get r in terms of h. So let's look over here. This is 12. This is h. This is a 90-degree angle, and that's r. What do I know? I know Pythagoras. I can say that 12 squared is equal to h squared plus r squared. So therefore, r squared is simply 12 squared, which is 144 minus h squared. All I do is I substitute that into this equation. So therefore, V is 1 over 3 pi times 144 minus h squared times h. I multiply the h into my bracket. I get 1 over 3 pi times, what is this? This becomes 144h minus h cubed. And therefore, if I multiply everything out, I get that my volume is equal to 48 pi times my height minus 1 over 3 pi times h cubed. And there is my final answer. Okay, guys? Will they always give you the formula? No, not always. This examiner was very nice. Sometimes they do expect you to know it, but it just depends on who set the test. All right. Moving on. The gardener wants to maximize the volume of water in the flower pot. Determine the value of h for which the volume is a maximum. So, if I plotted the volume of my flower pot with the different heights of h, it will make something that looks like this, all right? Some weird random graph. And the maximum point over here will be at my turning point. So, what do? I first know, okay, my original equation is 48 pi height minus 1 over 3 pi times h cubed, all right? The next step, always, this is for every minimum maximum question you get. You find the first derivative. Now remember, this is in terms of h. So this just becomes 48 pi minus, you multiply the 3 with 1/3, that's 1 pi h squared. Now we found the first derivative of my equation. Your next step, you always set your first derivative equal to 0. So 0 is equal to 48 pi minus pi h squared. So therefore, 48 pi is equal to pi h squared. So you can divide both sides by pi, they cancel out, and therefore h squared is equal, h squared is equal to 48. So therefore, h is equal to plus or minus 4 square root 3. All right. However, remember, we want the maximum value. So therefore, the maximum height is equal to 4 square root 3. And there we go. So remember, guys, you find your first derivative, you set it equal to 0, and you find the values of x, right? For which the volume is a maximum. If they said determine the maximum volume, you find your values for h, and then you substitute it into your original function. But in this case, they never. Okay? Almost done, guys. Last question, and then we are done. For 10.1, it says, a survey was conducted about the broadcasting of the Olympic Games on television. 150 males and 100 females were interviewed to establish if they like broadcasting or not. The table below shows the results, right? 10.1.1 asks, calculate the value of A and B. So, yes, you are correct. You can write units. And there we go. Okay, so for 10.1.1 asks, says calculate the values of A and B. So guys, what did you get for A and what did you get for B? Can you please post your answers in the chat? Perfect. And what was the answer for B? Perfect. All right. So A, guys, this is just simple addition. Remember, this whole section here must add, this whole column must add up to 150. So that means that A needs to be 90. For B, this whole row needs to add up to, or what? You just add up the whole row because we know what this is. This is 90. So therefore, B is 120. Done. All right. Easy, 2 marks on a plate. Let me just read it over here. I can't really see the question so nicely. 10.1.2, it says, calculate the probability that if a person is chosen randomly, he will be a male that likes broadcasting. So simply what they want is what's the probability of being a male and liking broadcasting. So what you do is you go to your table and you look for the male section and you look for like broadcasting, which is this point. So therefore, that is equal to 60 over your total amount, which is in this corner over here, 250. And that is equal to 0.24. And that's my answer. So the probability of being a male and liking the broadcasting, it's 0.24, or about 24%. Okay, there we go. Next question. 10.1.3 asks, determine whether a person's preference for broadcasting is independent of the person's gender. Support your answer with calculations. Now remember, there's an important word that they've given you. They said independent. What does independent mean? If events are independent, that means the probability of A and B is equal to the probability of A times the probability of B. If independent. Okay, guys, it's not always the case. If they said the events are independent, then you use this equation. If they do not say that, forget this equation immediately. All right. Hope that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is, you could have chosen being a female and liking the broadcasting. You could have chosen being a male and not liking the broadcasting. You could have chosen a number of things. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to choose male and the ones who like the broadcasting, because I just did a calculation for that in the previous scenario. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, what is the probability of being a male? That's what you first ask yourself. All right. And where you go over here. The probability of being a male is 150 over 250. All right. That's about 0.6. What's the probability that someone likes broadcasting? So I'm going to say LB for liking broadcasting. That is equal to You go over here. Remember, that's the total people that like broadcasting. That's 130 over 250. You get 0.52. So therefore, what is the probability that the person is a male and likes broadcasting? You simply multiply the two. It's 0.6 times 0.52. All right, and you should get an answer of 0.312. So that's if the events are independent. However, in the previous question, we calculated what is the probability that you are a male that likes broadcasting, and you get 0.24. All right, so therefore, it's not independent. All right, whoa. Sorry. So I've actually I've made a bit of a mistake here. Forget what I've said. Let me just rub it out. I think I skipped a few steps now, and it might be a bit confusing. So let me just rewrite it. There we go. Okay. So now, what do we do? Okay, we look now for what's the probability of being a male and liking broadcasting, all right? So we go to our table and we go to the 60, right? Because that's the probability of being a male and liking broadcasting, and we get 0.24. That was what we calculated in the previous question. Now, if these events are independent, that means that the probability of being a male and multiplied by the probability of liking broadcasting must be the same as the probability of being a male and the probability of being a male and liking broadcasting. So this becomes 0.6 times 0.52 is equal to 0.24. And you get 0.312 is equal to 0.24. Now, the last time I did math, I know that this is not the same. So they are not equal to each other. So therefore, these are not independent events. All right. And that's your final answer. So remember, you first find out, okay, what's the probability of being a male? What's the probability of liking broadcasting? Then you go, what's the probability of being a male and liking broadcasting? And then you test if those two are equal. So if you test if this multiplied by that is the same as this over here. If it's not the same, it's not independent. If it's the same, they are independent. All right? Does that make sense, guys? So your answer can be in a fraction or it can be in a decimal. All right? Sometimes it's just nicer to put it as decimals. Okay. Almost done, almost done. 10.2 states, 3 friends from England, just write it over here. Perfect. It says, 3 friends from England, Mark, John, and Michael, are to swim in the 100-meter butterfly race, which has 8 swimmers in total. The 8 swimmers line up to a lane, and the lanes are numbered 1 to 8. 10.2.1 asks, write down the total possible number of arrangements at the starting blocks. So how many arrangements can I make here, guys? You guys can answer that for me. So Jason, the question said support your answer with appropriate calculation. So if you just said no, they're not independent, you would not get the marks. So very good, guys. Remember, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So how many arrangements can I make? This is simply 8 factorial, which is 40,320. Just picture that, right? 8 guys lined up next to each other. There's over 40,000 ways in which you can arrange them, right? Determine the probability that Mark will be in lane 1, John will be in lane 2, and Michael in lane 3. Alrighty. So what did you guys get for 10.2.2? Okay. Okay. Anyone else want to try and answer? Ooh, very, very smart people. Okay, so let's draw it out. Remember, for this, it really helps to draw it out. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, here's the thing. This is Mark, this is John, and this is Michael. All right, this is lane 1, 2, and 3. And then these are the other numbers. 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, and 5. Now, here's the thing. We want to know what is the probability that Mark is in lane 1, John is in lane 2, and Michael in lane 3. So these guys are stuck in their lane. So we just put a block around them. So they are not going to change. They are stuck there. However, these other swimmers can still be swapped around, right? We can still rearrange them and that. So what's the probability? So how many ways? So firstly, how many ways can these guys be positioned so that that Mark is in lane 1, John is in lane 2, and Michael is in lane 3? How many ways can we arrange that? It's only one way, right? They can only be like that, or otherwise they're not like that, all right? So it's only one way in which Michael will be in lane 3, John in lane 2, and Mark in lane 1. How many ways can we arrange these other swimmers? Well, there's 5 of them. We were not told anything about them. So there's 5 factorials ways. So that becomes 1 times 5 factorial, which is 120. We are not done. We want to know the probability. Remember, the probability of an event occurring is the number of times this event occurs divided by the total amount. All right? So that becomes 120 divided by 8 factorial. And therefore, the probability that these guys are in lane 1, 2, and 3 is simply equal to 1 over 336. All right, so there's a 1 out of a 336 chance that they are in that particular order. All right, do we all understand that? Hope so. Okay, last 2 questions. Okay, it says 10.3 states, a company uses a coding system to identify its clients. Each code consists of 2 letters and a sequence of digits. For example, and they've given us 2 examples. All right. The letters can be chosen from A, B, C, D, and E. So there's 5 options here. Now they've given us some constraints. The first one, letters may be repeated in the code. All right. And we can use the digits 0 to 9. No digit may be repeated in the code. All right. So the letters can be repeated, but the numbers cannot. And the digit part of the code may not begin with a 0. So I can't start with a 0. Okay. In how many different ways for 10.3.1 can clients be identified with a coding system made up of 2 letters and 2 digits? Can you guys answer that for me in the chat, please? So answer that. I have 1 answer so far. I'll let the rest answer. Perfect. So remember, there's going to be 2 letters, 1, 2, and 2 digits. So how many letters can I choose from? I can choose from 5 letters. How many letters can I choose from again after I use the first one? I can repeat letters, so I can choose 5 again. How many numbers can I choose from? Remember, I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. But the problem is I cannot start with a 0. So for the first number here, how many options do I have from? I have 9 options. All right. Now let's say I pick a 2. I used a 2. Now I can't repeat a 2 because they said to me, you cannot repeat a number. How many options do I have left? Well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and now I can use the 0. So I have 9 options. So this becomes 9. So this is equal to 5 squared times 9 squared, which is 2025. So those are the different clients, all right? Or the amount of different clients that they can use. The final question asks, determine the least number of digits that is required for a company to uniquely identify 6,800 clients using their coding system. So guys, what was the answer for the final question? They always like to give the hardest question last. So what was your answer for the final one? That's not the answer. Remember, they're asking determine the least number of digits. Okay. Okay, so what you do is you go, okay, when there were two numbers, okay, I only had 2025 options. Now let's do three numbers. All right, so they are my two letters, and I can have one, two, three numbers. How many letters do I have to choose from? I have five. I can repeat letters, so I have another five options left. For the numbers, remember, you start off with nine options because you cannot use a zero. After you have chosen a number, you still have nine options left because now you can choose the zero. But now I pick another number. How many options do I have left? I have eight. You tally them up and you get 16,200. So I can't use that because I need to identify at least 680,000. Let's try again. Let's try two letters and one, two, three, four numbers. So this becomes five, right? Because remember, the letters don't actually change. Nine, remember, I can't use a zero. Now I have another nine options. I have eight options left. I choose another number. I then have seven options. So this becomes 113,400. Again, I need to identify over 680,000. Can't use that. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is 5, 5, 9, 9, 8, 7, and 6. Now let's see now. If you do that, you get 680,400. So what does that mean? That means to identify at least 680,000 people, I need to have numbers that are here 5. The lowest amount of digits I can have is 5 numbers. So therefore, lowest amount of numbers of digits. And there we go. All right. So do we all understand that when someone asks, why is it 4 marks? Because you actually had to show your calculations for this one. So you actually had to do what I did now. All right, so someone asked, I have a question regarding counting principles. When we are not told about repetition of letters or numbers, yes, so they must tell you that numbers may not be repeated or numbers will be repeated, right? They can't just give you like, they will have to tell you whether they can be repeated or whether they cannot be repeated, okay? Now, okay, guys, that was the final question. We just went about 10 minutes over time, so I do apologize, but that was because of our break, all right? So guys, thank you so much for coming. Yes, we will send the link out by 5 o'clock the latest. All right, maybe a few minutes past 5. All right. So guys, really thank you so much. Please note, all right, someone's saying Bobby's my uncle. Guys, I am not your uncle. All right. Otherwise, your parents will have some explaining to do. But guys, enjoy the exam. And please, I will be sharing the link as well as an evaluation form. Please try and fill out that evaluation form. We want to know how we can improve for the next set of lessons. And we'll be seeing you Saturday, 9 o'clock sharp. All right, for maths paper 2 revision. All right. So hopefully good luck for your maths paper 1. Judging from all your answers, I just know everyone here is going to get an 80% or above. All right. Don't worry, if you cannot enter the group, I will email it to you guys. Wees geduldig, you know? Hima. But anyways, guys, enjoy the afternoon and yeah, good luck for your final exam, paper 1.